Some people hit a rock bottom with a crash. Mine was a slow, silent descent into a gray, featureless landscape of mediocrity. And I didn't even notice until I was already there. The one thing that pulled me out wasn't a miracle. It was a simple notebook and an unbreakable promise 30 minutes a day. My name is Leo. If you had met me 7 years ago, you would have forgotten me in 5 minutes. I was the human equivalent of beige wallpaper. My life was contained within a small, fabric-walled cubicle at a downtown data processing firm. My title, Data Reconciliation Specialist, was a fancy way of saying I stared at 2 spreadsheets all day and found the differences. It was a job that required the attention of a hawk, but the intellectual engagement of a rock. 9 Ozort a.m. to 5 Ozort p.m. My life was a metronome of clicks and keystrokes, a rhythm of pure, unadulterated monotony. I lived in a small apartment that was clean, but devoid of personality. My evenings were a predictable ritual, a microwaved dinner eaten in front of the television, watching shows I didn't particularly like, followed by hours of aimless scrolling on my phone until my eyes burned and I could finally fall asleep. I wasn't sad. Sadness is an active emotion. It has sharp edges. I was numb, adrift in a calm sea of nothingness. The vibrant, ambitious young man who graduated from college with dreams of building things and solving interesting problems had vanished, replaced by this ghost who paid his bills on time. My zero wasn't a financial figure. It was the total sum of my ambition, my skills, and my belief that life could be anything more than this. The catalyst for change wasn't a single event, but a slow-burning realization. It started in the company break room. I was waiting for my stale coffee to brew when 2 of the company's software engineers, Mark and Sarah, walked in. They were always buzzing with an energy that felt alien in our quiet office. They were talking about a new build, their hands gesturing wildly as they described refactoring the authentication service and integrating a new third-party API. The words meant nothing to me. It was a completely foreign language, but the way they spoke with such passion, such collaborative energy, such a sense of ownership struck me like a physical blow. They weren't just employees. They were creators. They were architects shaping a digital world, solving complex puzzles. In that moment, I saw myself with painful clarity. I wasn't an architect. I wasn't even a bricklayer. I was the guy who counted the bricks after they were already in the wall. That night, something inside me was different. The glow of the television felt hollow. The endless scroll of social media felt suffocating. For the first time in years, I felt a flicker of the old me, the one who wanted more, on a whim. I opened my aging laptop, blew the dust off the screen, and typed a simple question into the search bar. How do you start learning to code? That was my first step. It wasn't a leap, it was a tiny, hesitant shuffle in the dark. The result was an avalanche. I was buried under an overwhelming mountain of information, dozens of programming languages, hundreds of online courses, thousands of tutorials. The sheer volume was paralyzing. I spent a week just reading about what to learn, getting more confused and intimidated with each article. I finally chose Python, mostly because a blog post said it was beginner-friendly. The first few weeks were a disaster. I tried watching video tutorials, but the information washed over me, in one ear and out the other. The concepts were abstract and slippery. I'd feel a moment of clarity on variables, only to be completely lost when the instructor started talking about data types and conditionals. My brain, so accustomed to the passive, simple tasks of my job, actively resisted this new, difficult information. It yearned for the easy comfort of routine. The voice of self-doubt, long dormant, awoke with a vengeance. "Who are you kidding? Leo," it would whisper. "You're not a tech genius. You're not smart enough for this. You're just a data entry guy. Stick to what you know." Failure became my constant companion. I tried to write a simple program to calculate a budget. It took me 3 nights just to figure out why it kept crashing. The error messages were cryptic, and my frustration mounted until I wanted to throw my laptop against the wall. I felt like an imposter. I was a tourist in the world of technology, and I didn't belong. This was my first great wall, the point where most people, including the old me, would have given up. The initial spark of motivation had faded, replaced by the cold, hard reality of the challenge. I was ready to quit. I closed my laptop one night, convinced it was a foolish dream. But the next morning, back in my gray cubicle, something had shifted. The monotony felt different. It was no longer just boring. It was unbearable. The image of the developers, their eyes bright with purpose, was burned into my mind. I realized that the pain of trying and failing was still better than the pain of doing nothing. The numbness was the real enemy. That evening, I came back with a new strategy. I understood that my chaotic, unstructured approach wasn't working. I needed a system. I needed a habit. My new journey began not with a grand gesture, but with a small, unbreakable promise to myself: 1 hour, every single day. No matter how tired I was, no matter how frustrating it got. 1 hour. I bought a simple notebook and a pen. I started treating my self-study like a real class. I would watch a tutorial, pause it, and write down the key concepts in my own words. I would try to explain it to an imaginary student. This simple act of writing and re-explaining forced the concepts to stick in my brain in a way that passive watching never could. I discovered the power of community. I found online forums and groups for beginner programmers. At first, I was too scared to post anything, fearing my questions were too stupid. I was a lurker, reading the questions of others and the patient answers from more experienced developers. One day, after being stuck on a problem for 2 days, I gathered all my courage and posted my first question. I was terrified of being mocked. Within an hour, I got a reply. It wasn't just an answer. It was a kind, detailed explanation. The person who replied had been in my shoes before. They understood my frustration. That small act of kindness was a turning point. I realized I wasn't alone on this journey. The internet wasn't just a library. It was a global classroom filled with teachers and fellow students. Slowly, painfully, things started to click. Variables were no longer abstract. They were just boxes to hold information. Functions were mini-machines that performed a specific task. Loops were a way to do a boring, repetitive job automatically, something I understood all too well. I started to see code not as a strange, magical language, but as a set of logical instructions, a tool for building things. After about 6 months of my 1 hour a day ritual, I felt I had learned enough theory. It was time to build something. This is the second great wall for many self-learners, the leap from following tutorials to creating something original. It's terrifying. Tutorials hold your hand. A real project throws you into the deep end of the pool. My project idea was modest. Our local animal shelter had a clunky, outdated website that was difficult to navigate. I decided I would try to build them a new, simple one. It would have a page to display pictures and information about the animals available for adoption. This project became my world. It consumed my thoughts. I spent my one dedicated hour which often stretched into 2 or 3, wrestling with it. Every new feature was a mountain to climb. How do I get images to display in a neat grid? How do I build a contact form that actually sends an email? How do I make it look good on a mobile phone? Every question sent me on a long journey through documentation, articles, and forum posts. There were days of absolute despair, where a single bug would halt all my progress. I remember spending an entire weekend trying to fix an issue where the website's layout would break on a specific screen size. I was close to giving up, my mind a fog of frustration. I went for a walk to clear my head, and as I was walking, the solution suddenly popped into my head. It was a single, misplaced character in my code. The feeling of running back home, typing in the fix, and seeing the website layout snap perfectly into place was a rush of pure euphoria. It was 1,000 times more satisfying than anything I had ever experienced in my data entry job. I wasn't just typing numbers, I was solving problems. I was creating. It took me 3 months of relentless work, but I finally finished it. It wasn't perfect. A professional developer would probably find a dozen things to criticize. But it worked. It was real. I showed it to the manager at the animal shelter, my hands trembling. She was overjoyed. She couldn't believe a volunteer had done this for them for free. Seeing the new website go live, with pictures of dogs and cats waiting for a home, was the proudest moment of my life. I had built something useful. I had made a small, positive impact on the world. I was no longer just a cog. That project was my portfolio. It was my proof. With a newfound surge of confidence, I started applying for junior developer jobs. And then I hit the third Great Wall rejection. My inbox became a graveyard of automated responses. Thank you for your interest, but we've decided to move forward with other candidates. While your profile is impressive, we are looking for someone with more experience. I managed to get a few interviews. They were nerve-wracking. I was a self-taught amateur competing against university graduates with computer science degrees. In my first technical interview, I completely froze. The interviewer asked me a question about data structures, and my mind went blank. Even though I had studied them, I stammered, I stumbled, and I left the interview feeling humiliated. The doubt came rushing back, stronger than ever. See? Leo, you're a fraud. You built one little website. That doesn't make you a developer. You're just pretending. It was tempting to retreat to the safety of my cubicle, to accept that I had tried and failed. It was more than most people did. Right. But the taste of creation, the joy of problem solving, I couldn't forget it. I couldn't go back to being numb. So, I treated the rejections as data. It was painful feedback, but it was feedback nonetheless. My lack of a formal degree was a weakness, so I had to make my practical skills an undeniable strength. I analyzed the job descriptions and identified my weak spots. I went back to my 1-hour-a-day routine, but now with a laser focus. I dove deeper into the topics where I was weak. I started a new, more complex personal project, a small web application to help people track their reading habits. I also started contributing to open source projects. This was another scary step. It meant putting my code out in public, to be judged by experienced developers from around the world. My first contribution was tiny. I fixed a typo in the documentation of a popular library. But when my change was accepted, it felt like I had been accepted into a global community of builders. After another 4 months of learning, building, and contributing, I started applying for jobs again. I was still nervous, but this time, I was different. I was more prepared. I had more projects to talk about. I could speak about the challenges I faced and, more importantly, how I overcame them. The breakthrough came from a small but growing tech startup. The interview was tough, but it was also a conversation. They were less interested in my academic background and more interested in how I thought. They asked me to solve a problem on a whiteboard. I talked them through my process, including the parts where I was unsure. I showed them my projects, explaining my design choices and the lessons I learned from my mistakes. A week later, I got a call. "Leo, we'd like to offer you the position of junior software developer." I was sitting in my car during my lunch break when I heard those words. I was silent for a moment, unable to process it. Tears welled up in my eyes. It wasn't just a job offer. It was a validation of every late night, every moment of frustration, every victory, big or small. It was the finish line of a marathon I never thought I could complete. My last day at the data entry office was surreal. As I packed up my small box of personal belongings, I looked around at the sea of gray cubicles. 2 years earlier, this had been my entire world. Now, it was just a chapter in my past. I felt a sense of gratitude for the place, for it had given me the push I needed to search for something more. My new job was everything I had hoped for and more. It was challenging, exciting, and I was surrounded by passionate, intelligent people. The learning curve was steep, and I still felt like an imposter at times, but I knew how to handle that feeling now. I knew that the path forward was paved with questions, with study, and with a willingness to be a beginner. The habit of self-learning wasn't just a tool to get a job, it was a mindset for life. Today, 5 years after I first typed, "What is Python?" into a search bar, I am a senior software developer at that same company. I lead a small team, and I have the privilege of mentoring new developers, some of whom are self-taught. Just like me, I see the same fear and doubt in their eyes that I once had in mine, and I make sure to tell them my story. I tell them that the journey from zero is not about being a genius. It's about being persistent. It's about embracing the discomfort of not knowing. It's about the quiet discipline of showing up, day after day, especially on the days you don't feel like it. It's about building a habit, 1 hour at a time,